this is promoted as East and West, and what do you notice about this audience? Not a lot of West. So, we've talked a lot about intellectually why diversity is good, right? It'd be both intellectually inaccurate to say diversity is not good, and it'd definitely be politically incorrect to say diversity is not good. So first on the intellectual part, right? What's the key to business? Seeing the threats and opportunities externally, seeing the strengths and weaknesses internally, figure out the best combination, and make your, what strategy? Bets. Here are my bets on how we're going to play the game, taking advantage of the insight into threats and opportunities, leveraging our strengths, protecting our weaknesses, and investing in different countries and different markets and different whatever to get the best risk versus return. So diversity is obviously important. You see more threats and opportunities, the more diverse you are. You get a better sense of strengths and weaknesses with diversity. Intellectually, it makes sense. Politically correct? It makes sense. Reality? It's not natural. Sorry, but we're not built for it. So to accomplish what we know makes sense takes discipline. And if you played music competitively, or did art competitively, or played sports competitively, what's discipline? It's doing the things you don't want to do, but you know it makes sense to do it, so I'm going to push through and do it anyway. You know what discipline is? It's doing the things you don't want to do. When I was a musician, that's where I started out. I didn't love practicing 4 hours a day. I loved performing. But it took practice 4 hours a day to be able to perform at a world-class level as a musician. When I was an athlete, I didn't like running 5 miles a day. When I played competitively as an athlete, I worked out like crazy. Discipline is doing the things you don't want to do and doing them anyway. So we know intellectually diversity makes sense. We know politically correct it makes sense. And then we step back from and we say, you know what? It isn't happening. You want proof? Look at this room. Look at this room. So, how do you break through that? Well, first, you got to figure out why it's not natural. Once you understand why it's not natural, you can work through those things. It's sort of like learning anything in school, right? A lot of us wouldn't have worked as hard in school if it wasn't our parents putting pressure on us and our self-esteem of not getting a bad grade and embarrassing ourselves. All right? And a lot of that stuff, when we first started learning it, not necessarily stuff we wanted to learn. But there was something pressuring us to do that, offsetting the fact that we actually didn't want to do it. So, why is diversity so unnatural? Because we know what's good about it. If we can figure out what's unnatural about it, we can break through it. Is that fair? All right. So let's look at certain things that are true. Every country, every culture, got nothing to do with male versus female, got nothing to do with intelligence, money, anything. There's certain things that are true in general across all societies. So tell me if these don't fit that. One, we innately as human beings want to belong. And we see ourselves as either belonging or not belonging. We see ourselves when we are welcomed in, or not welcomed in. We have a sense of wanting to belong. Two, we are born as human beings to avoid risk more than we are to seek gain. We're wired for it. We're wired to avoid risk. Risk to our physically, risk emotionally, and avoiding that risk is more important than generating gain. So women, you want to know why most guys don't ask you on a date? Afraid of getting rejected. Biggest obstacle to behavior is fear of a mistake, a fear of embarrassment, a fear of discomfort. So, when we have choice, not forced by parents, not forced by political correctness, not forced by anything, how do we as human beings naturally use our time? Well, one, we follow the path of least resistance. We tend to do what's ever easiest unless required to do something different. Is that fair? Follow the path of least resistance. Two, we put ourselves in situations that we feel good. We avoid situations where we don't feel good. Great, so what kind of places do we feel good? Well, one is we tend to feel good when we feel like we belong. Two is we tend to feel good when we feel it's safe. We trust who we're with. We trust them. We tend to feel good when we understand stuff. It's not complicated. We don't have to work at it. And another thing we're naturally wired for, we are naturally wired as human beings to be selfish. And it's sort of like a contrary thing. On the one hand, we're wired to be selfish, but on the other hand, we want to belong. It's almost like two contrasting needs that sort of don't fit. So God made our life schizophrenic. We want both. And that's a constant battle internally as well as everyone we deal with. Behavior, what's in it for me? So now let's step back and think, well, what's happening here? Let's just take trust. Who do we trust? People that seem like they care about us and respect us. How do we know if they care and respect us? Because we're interacting with them. They're asking questions about us. They're focused on us. They're demonstrating respect. They're showing that they really care. Okay, that's fine. What kind of people do we trust and feel most comfortable with? The more they're like us, the more comfortable we are. We're wired that way. Because we trust through our eyes, not through our ears. We don't trust logically, we trust emotionally. So we tend to, path of least resistance, surround ourselves with people that are most like us. Typical American is much more comfortable with a Canadian than someone from England, because they talk a little bit more like us. But it's still English. We tend to be more comfortable with the English than the Australians, because their accent in English is weird. We tend to put ourselves in situations we're comfortable. Next thing, we tend to put ourselves in situations we understand well. We talked about language here for a bunch. Guess what? It's more work to be understood in a diverse group. It takes effort. Let's look at it from a personal, because that changes most people. Personally, what drives you? Well, you're in a business school. It's return on investment, right? In all business, return on investment, risk versus reward. That is everything in business, right? I got the entire equation. What's your asset? You got one basic asset to use, to invest. It's called time. You have one basic asset that anyone else is going to see the value. And it's going to be capability. Now, time is the thing that you can leverage most. Time prevents you from getting more done. Time is the thing that you feel best about personally when you use it well. Time is the thing that reflects on your reputation, how well you used it. And therefore, return on that time is your return investment, right? Now, does diversity take a lot more time? You bet. It takes time to develop that trust. Because trust comes through knowing someone else cares and you're comfortable and you're protected and they're not going to look down on you. And I'll use an example. Let's just cut through the political correctness in the school. The belief of a lot of the English kids is the Chinese students look at them as lazy and not that smart. You don't know that. That's the stereotype. They don't work as hard as us Asians. They're lazy. Well, they value different things. So, self-esteem, reality, not politically correct. If you're Anglo, it's going to take more time to be diverse. And I might not be as feeling as effective because it's really slowing me down, and time's my big asset. Takes a lot more time to understand what's going on. Takes a lot more time to build trust. And in terms of the third major thing that drives behavior, I know how we think in our cultures, but I don't know what you're thinking in your cultures and what you really want. And I got a lot of stereotype built up. I don't mean me. What do I think that is? Hell, you're communists. I think, but I'm not sure what that is anymore. But I know you are that, so you got to be thinking differently. So the key point is, we are not naturally built to be diverse, but we know intellectually it's a lot more value. So therefore, what do we know about it? It takes discipline. It's not natural. It takes more time, more discomfort, more being vulnerable, more being everything we're wired to do to avoid. Except for one thing, the logic, diversity makes sense. Better decisions, better context, better everything. So, here's the bad news. Here's the bad news. You can tell how teams are working, not just based on what happens in the room when they're a team. I can tell more about quality teams what happens when the meeting's over. I built 2 companies over $1 billion. 2. One went to $3 billion, one went to $1 billion. I have a fair amount of insight about teams. How do I know I have a healthy team? What are they doing after work? What are they doing during the day? Are they calling or emailing, or are they walking over to talk to them? Are they going out for a beer? Do I invite them to a concert? How do I know if I had good, healthy teams or not? That takes effort.